on that. So then coming up on the show, as I said, 10 o'clock, we'll be looking out for that media briefing. At the same time, though, it's a Thursday. So today for Municipal Watch, what is on the agenda is zooming in on municipalities and in particular the issue of unused grants and how millions are wasted in terms of unused grants that municipalities simply return to Treasury for whatever reason. So hopefully we'll still have an opportunity to have part of that conversation. And then the final hour of the show will take somewhat of a deep dive into then the decision to reverse the VAT. And part of what we will then try and understand is how exactly this is going to affect us in as far as this reversal is concerned. So what is going to happen next with the process in Parliament, the introduction of the new bills, what do we need to understand about that? And also, many of us have received those notifications, right, from financial institutions warning that VAT is going to be going ahead. What does it all mean now that we have this statement? So that's what you can expect on the show over the next 3 hours. I'll be taking your calls on 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107.
The confession booth. A place where the sin-laden soul can offload their transgressions, all in the hopes of finding reprieve for their sins. Stolen your co-worker's lunch? Then the ordinary confession booth with your regular priest will do. But murdered your long-time nemesis and dumped their body in a vat of acid? Oh, then you better hope you're not in Father Brown's confession booth, because he is bent on catching all the bad guys. Tune in to Father Brown, Mondays to Wednesdays at 9 p.m, only on S3. Open up. S3.
After a 0-all draw in Mzansi, the Pyramids are confident they will complete their agenda with victory on home soil. But Rivero's boys believe they will end their long-distance trip to Egypt with an impressive performance. This is the second leg semi-final clash of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Experience the thrilling encounter of African football. Pyramids FC versus Orlando Pirates this Friday, 25 April at 7:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC 2 and SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, let me start it off in Sandton this morning. Shonisani, good morning.
Morning, Cathy. Thanks for taking my call. Let me shoot straight to it. That, there's certain things that politicians need to understand, that there are markets and markets react. When this whole thing started, there was already a pushback. Now today, the Minister of Finance, Kodongwane, has to eat a humble pie. And this one and that one is going to claim that they're the ones that came to the fore to make sure that it's not implemented. But I then say, when the ANC and other parties signed for the budget to be tabled, chances were already it means it won't go through. Then I then say, all political parties, whenever there's such things, in order to avoid playing with our emotions, why is it that they don't sit first behind closed doors, disagree where they disagree, agree where they agree, and then when they come out to the public, come out with one voice, so that markets are not affected, we don't get affected as the people. Everyone in any political party will come to the fore and they'll promise you whatever they promise you, but once they're in power, they're not going to do that. Simple example. The DA was complaining about the bloatation of the cabinet. Now with this VAT issue, in everything that they tabled, they never said cut, because they are part of that. So everyone is looking after their own pocket. No one has won, it's all about them, and we, as the voters, they don't care about us.
You know, Shonisani, I'm inclined to agree with you because when we get to understand part of what the negotiating process looked like, and I'm not talking now within the last 3 weeks that we saw the threats to take this matter to Parliament. I mean, let's go back to February, right? The first round of contention, the first time we saw some of the difficulties. There's been extensive reporting, including with the documents that were leaked around draft proposals between the DA and the ANC that very explicitly showed that the DA did not have a problem and at some point conceded to an increase, but with conditions of what else needed to form part of the budgeting process.
To just sum it up, Cathy, I would say to all political parties, stop politicking at our expense. It's me and you that is getting affected by the increment of electricity, water. Me and you are affected. And then tomorrow you'll be told that, Cathy, you are working. You need to make sure that within your salary you invest a certain portion of money. How do you then invest when people just say whatever they want willy-nilly and knowing very well that it will affect the rand? And when it affects the rand, we get affected.
So, Shonisani, no particular party gets
My vote.
your vote as a result
They
of
are all
this.
liars. It's all about themselves.
All right. Okay. Thanks for that, Shonisani. Thanks
All
for
right,
that.
sure.
Les, you're in the Western Cape. Good morning.
Morning, how are you? Okay, let me go forward. I give the credit to the DA because the DA is the one organization from the GNU that opened the case without fear. And then the DA was never intimidated by the ANC like other political parties that were blowing like a wind. So all other political parties were blowing like wind. In the case of UDF, in the case of a Good Party, and even PA and other parties, they didn't raise their own concern against the VAT hike. Only the DA and the Freedom Plus.
Les, I don't think that it's honest to say that they didn't raise concerns. If you go to the statements issued by all of those parties, especially following February, the first time that the minister was supposed to table that budget and he was unable to, they were very clear with the fact that they opposed the VAT increase.
Those parties that opposed the VAT increase, they didn't stand firm for their own point that no, they are not going to support that VAT. In this case, you can see these things easily. If you still remember the Progressive Caucus, when the GNU was formed, where the DA, IFP, and the PA, and the Freedom Plus were the four parties that voted for Ramaphosa there. And then if you can check, those other parties that came from the Progressive Caucus, those are the ones that make a blowing movement when it comes to the VAT hike. So in that point was no longer visible. So another thing, what I can say is I give credit for the DA, and the DA when you say no is no, yes is yes.
And Les, I'm curious, why only the DA? Because the EFF was in court with the DA yesterday. The EFF has also long opposed this VAT increase.
The point of the EFF is additional. The point of the EFF is additional. The cornerstone is the DA, where they took the decision within 24 hours. Would the EFF go and read the complaints about the DA docket and then make their own additional? So the cornerstone is DA. Imagine, as I can tell you right now, Cathy, imagine South Africa without DA and Freedom Front. How can it be? Because those people can think that they can steal and come to the ground and say, can you see the DA is dividing us, is racial, They go and steal and come to say something like that. But the VAT, the stopping of the 0.5 high VAT increase, this is the benefit for all.
Okay.
And you can see from the incoming election, the DA will grow. I'm one of the supporters of the DA.
And okay. So the DA has won your support just through this move. But have you always been a DA supporter or not? You've changed because of what has happened now.
No, the point, I was a DA supporter, and then now the point increased. Now
you're even more entrenched in supporting the party.
99.9%.
All right, Les, I hear you loud and clear. Les out in the Western Cape. I'm still taking your calls on 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032 on the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107. Let's take a couple of your WhatsApp voice notes that'll lead us into the 9:30 news headlines.
For the ANC, I won't, but they didn't win this thing anyway. They just wanted the political whatever. Thank you very much. Kimarumo Mahike. Good morning.
Hi, Katie. Hi, good morning, Katie, and your producer and all the listeners of SAFM. Kate, I'd like to say thank you for the Minister of Finance to reverse this thing of VAT. And Katie, I hear on the news that there is someone who win 110 million. Sure. And then this person was playing with the Via app. And then I think was spent only 30 rand or 35 rand, I don't know. So, Kate, I like to know if you win that such money, you can be able to get the whole that money, or the SARS you're gonna cut some of the money there. I want to know, can you just brief us? Maybe you can tell us more, Kate, about this thing. Sia from Cape Town. Here, some of the people, they have like you 100.
Morning, Kate. Sunday, the KZN. When was the last Palestinian elections? Does the Palestinian have a legitimate government? Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, Action SA says it's proud of being a constructive opposition party that contributed to the reversal of the 0.5 percentage point VAT increase. The party made recommendations to the report of the Standing Committee on Finance that National Treasury be given 30 days to find alternatives to the tax hike. The NPA has enhanced its team of experts as it considers an appeal of the controversial televangelist Timothy Omotoso's judgment. The team includes sexual offences prosecutors with senior counsel. And US President Donald Trump has accused Volodymyr Zelensky of harming peace negotiations after the Ukrainian leader said he could never recognize occupied Crimea as Russian territory. I'll have details on these and other stories at 10.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
You're listening to The Talking Point. It's still the National Roundtable, your open line. I'm taking your calls on 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. By the way, I also want to hear from Mike in Middelburg today. Mike, please call in. I want to know what you make of President Volodymyr Zelensky's visit to Pretoria today. Glenn, you're in Bedford View. Good morning, Glenn.
Morning, Katie. How are you, my sister?
Doing well, thank you. Understand you're a first-time caller.
No, on your show.
Okay, I see. Well, welcome to The Talking Point.
I'm normally by this time I'm either in theater or somewhere in hospital, but I normally call on Ashraf's show in the afternoon.
Oh, wonderful. All right, welcome, Glenn. What do you want to talk about?
My dear sister, the VAT issue, my champion here is Herman Mashaba and his party. I'm a former ANC voter, but I think Mashaba has won me over because he took all the criticism and he said, I'll support you in principle. There will be a condition that you relent on the VAT issue, but I will support the fiscus, the fiscus proposal. So Herman Mashaba is the hero for me because he overlooked all the noise and he made sure that he supports, the progress of the country. And the DA are the biggest scammers in the game because had the ANC agreed to their conditions, they're not going to go to court. They're not going to oppose the VAT increase. And now Helen Zille is hosting a press briefing, praising their supporters, saying that they are the ones who fought for the country. They didn't fight for the country. They fought for themselves. And when they lost in the battle between themselves and the ANC, they ran to court. The only personal champion is Mashaba, because Mashaba said, I will take all the blame and I will carry the country with me.
Glenn, to the extent that until last week, when we look at the affidavit that was filed by the minister in court, including some of the arguments yesterday, it seemed that there was still no real shift out of the Treasury when it comes to a decision around VAT. It looks like they were still pushing through with it.
I wouldn't say so, my sister, because remember Mashaba had given them deadline as well with these conditions. Therefore, even his own deadline was fast approaching. Therefore, it cannot be that the DA's court beat is the one that persuaded the minister, because no one knows what the judge is going to say next week. The DA doesn't know what the judge is going to say next week. So obviously, through the negotiations of Mashaba and his other partners, they managed to persuade Godongwana to change his mind. It's not the DA. That's what I'm trying to refute. The DA did not persuade the government to change its stance, because the DA initially would have supported the ANC had the ANC agreed to their conditions. That's my standing point, my sister.
All right.
Because the ANC is trying to scam the voters into thinking that they were fighting for the voters from day one, whereas that's not the case.
Fair enough, Glenn. So last year, you did or didn't vote for Herman Mashaba?
I did vote for Mashaba. I was giving him a chance, and I'm very proud of my vote, even though I'm a former ANC voter.
Okay. All right, Glenn.
Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Bye. Glenn out in Bedfordview. Okay, so far, we've got people that had already voted for certain parties and believe that they made the right decision because, you know, as you heard, one of our callers voted DA and he believes the DA must be credited with this victory. As you heard from Glenn, he voted Action SA and standing firm by his party. I also want to hear from the people who maybe have been swayed, right? Maybe you went into it supporting a particular party, but now, after the last 3 months, your position around the party you've been supporting has shifted. And you've been maybe convicted or swayed by how some of the parties have handled themselves throughout this process. I also want to hear from those of you that maybe find themselves in that position. Mpho, you're in Pretoria. Good morning.
How are you?
Well, Mpho, go for it.
My hero here is Mashaba and Malema. I think we undermine Malema. Malema put his foot down from the start, says that I'm not going to support that. I respect Mashaba because Mashaba wanted at least a solution. He gave them option. I'll support you based on this fact. There is the biggest failure here, I think, is DA. I'm surprised, Katie. There are still people who think that DA is fighting for them. Really, those are people that DA think that he is playing with their mind. Because DA went there and negotiated for themselves, not for black people. They didn't want the Bella Act to be passed. The Land Act also, they're fighting to the nail, something that will help black people. DA is fighting for that. And then when DA comes out, they say to the public, we are fighting for you. This VAT will never support this. But behind closed doors, they say, no. They're backing. They say, no, cancel 1, 2, 3, do 1, 2, 3. They're not fighting for you. And you can't see that. Oh, boy. That is so tragic. You know, what DA does to the black people of this country, because they think that people don't have political knowledge. DA is playing with them. I hear somebody just saying now DA is doing that, and they don't even mention that DA negotiated behind closed doors for their own things, not for me and you. But we must know what DA is actually. Mashaba is a hero. I will give you one vote in the national election for the province, but nationally, I'm ANC. I'm just embarrassed about the ANC. I think ANC must just do self-introspection, look exactly who's advising their leaders. Because there are people there within the ANC, I think within the treasury as well. There are people there, really, who throw the minister under the bus.
Okay.
Deliberately.
Okay.
Thank you, KG. Thank you.
Thanks for calling in with that view. Is there room to give the opposition parties collective victory? You know, we always hear about collective responsibility. Can they just claim collective victory across the board as members of the opposition and say this is all of our victory as a result of all of our efforts? Is it just, I don't think it's been one thing that has led to this moment. I think it's taken pressure from different parts of society. Yes, it's come through political parties, but it's also come through civil society organizations. And we can't say that has not had an impact or that those views did not matter. Let me take a quick break. I'm back with more of your calls.
This Mother's Day, there's no better way to celebrate mom than with a thoughtful gift from Dis-Chem. Show her how much you care with luxurious bath and body gift sets from Bayless and Harding and Nature's Edition, or soothing Serengeti home fragrances and Price's candles. Imagine mom's delight as she unwraps her favorite fragrance or a stylish wall, Philips or Reflections hair appliance. Don't forget a sweet treat to indulge in. Spoil mom with perfect gifts from Dis-Chem. Hurry, offers end 11 May.
This season, the truth cuts deeper than ever. Silent Witness is back for its gripping 20th season, and no secret is safe. Dr. Nikki Alexander and the Lal Center team dive into chilling murders, dark conspiracies, and personal trials that hit closer to home than ever before. Truth speaks, if you know how to listen. Silent Witness, Season 20, Thursday and Fridays at 9 p.m. on S3. Don't just watch the mystery, feel it.
Rise and Shine are not willing to drop their heads as they chase victory to maintain a good top half position. But Matsatsansa Pitori are in a deep hunt for 3 points to escape from danger. Catch the exciting battle of Mzansi's football, Polokwane City FC versus Supersport United FC on Saturday, 26 April at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC One. Then at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
You're listening to The Talking Point. It's your national roundtable, 086 000 2032. Join the conversation on the open line, on the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. TJ, you're out in Limpopo. Good morning.
Cathy Mohlahlana.
Ralo Chapab.
The first time caller, maybe better than the other.
Oh wow, you are demanding it, eh? You are demanding it.
Yeah. On the issue, VAT, Cathy, I'm not swayed. I'm just a little bit embarrassed and really worried about my ANC. They've sort of left this whole thing until late for other processes to take over. If indeed it was the decision of the ANC now to come and reverse this type of a decision, they had an opportunity. But at the moment, my problem is that even if they go to court, if they win, they lose in the eyes of the public. If they lose now, they lose again in the eyes of the public. And this is where I'm a little bit worried about I don't know where this whole thing is coming from and why did they have to wait such a long time before they can come to their senses.
technically, TJ, one could argue that they lost the argument, at least in the eyes of the public, in February already, right? When the minister had to cancel his tabling of the budget because there was disagreement amongst the parties and amongst the GNU in particular.
Yeah, and this is that was the time when they had to come up with some, I don't know, maybe sort of play games so that they can be able to reverse their decision on this whole matter. But to leave it until so far, I think it's I'm not sure. I'm still going to vote for the ANC. I don't have any other place. But this type of decisions are making us worry.
Do you think there are going to be political consequences for the finance minister, Enoch Godongwana? And the reason I ask this, TJ, is because if you go back again to February, the statements that were made at the time was always that it's the prerogative of the finance minister to make such decisions. And it seems that even though there was disagreement within the ANC about the VAT increase going ahead, he was standing strong on that position.
Yeah, I don't think he's alone on this whole thing. But at the moment, and as you say, it's sort of going to give some people the right to throw him under the bus, to say it's your prerogative, you should have thought properly and whatever. But I really don't think Godongwana is alone on this matter.
Okay. Thanks for calling in, TJ, with that view. Not swayed, but disappointed about how this reflects on his party, the ANC. Mr. Nhlanhla Buthelezi, you're the president of the PRM. Good morning to you. You also want to add your 2 cents worth.
Good morning, listeners. Thanks very much for the news. That all those who voted in support of the fiscal framework with that in it have been defeated. We, as the People's Revolutionary Movement, thank the DA, the EFF, ATM, MK Party, and Freedom Front Plus. The DA representing the wealthy and the rich constituency, MK Party, ATM, and EFF representing the marginalized and the poor. EFF Plus representing Afrikaners and farm owners. The ANC, PAC, PA, IFP, Rise Mzansi, BOSA, Action SA, supporting the fiscal framework, which would have made the VAT increase by 1% starting in a staggered fashion, 0.5 this year, May 1, and another 0.5 April next year.
Yeah, Mr. Buthelezi, what you're saying is it's partly true, and it's not the entire truth, right? There was always a period of 30 days that needed to that gave opportunity for any form of review of the adoption of that fiscal framework.
Yes, there was.
Yes, so how you're representing it is not you're not giving the full picture of the sequence of events.
The banks and other financial institutions have been telling us that by May 1, 0.5% will be added.
As is prescribed by law, they have to do that.
By law, because of the support of the fiscal framework with 0.5% VAT increase in it, supported by those parties who voted for it. When there were those organizations or parties that said no, the ANC is abusing its narrow power that have been given by the GNU. And those parties, some of them have taken the ANC to court with its minister of the GNU. Other parties were lying to the South Africans that they are still discussing. I listened to the argument of the representation of the EFF, who was opposed by Enoch Godongwane, the minister, that Godongwane was supporting the VAT increase. He never retracted during the argument. And fortunately, the arguments are still there on social media and in other platforms, that the ANC was forced by the people themselves supporting these parties that were saying no to VAT increase. And the ANC knew very well that after May, everything was going to be haywire for them.
Okay.
Because really, they were standing for this. Otherwise, if the ANC had an absolute majority or 50% more or more majority, they would have raised it to 17%.
Okay.
Thanks to the parties that stood with the poor in particular. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for that view, Mr. Buthelezi, President of the PRM. Sharing his own sentiments there. Butana, you're out in Rosebank. Good morning.
You know, it is a victory for the poor people that are subjected to abuse by ANC decision. It's a victory for the poor people that have to pay 90,000 for one laptop. 90,000 for one laptop. It's a victory for poor people that their assets are inflamed and no consequences whatsoever. Not one asset, many assets. That's a victory for them. And this fight is a fight for all. It has been fight for all in all areas. No one can claim a success alone. And by the way, Cathy, a success is a parent of all people. All people love success. And Mr. Godongwane, please, there's a suggestion from Commissioner of SARS that he can collect almost a trillion, 880 billion. Just give him capacity. Are you so deaf? You don't listen to that? You're telling us that, well, I will get 75 billion. There is the answer. Please.
Okay. Butana, let's leave it there. Butana out in Rosebank. Yeah, still lots of your calls to get through this morning on the open line. I'll continue to take them on 086 000 2032.
In just 10 years, over 850 million winners have shared more than 31 billion rand with the National Lottery. That's not a dream, that's real money, won by real people, right here in Mzansi. So the question is, why not you? The next winner could come from your hometown. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery. After a 0-all draw in Mzansi, the Pyramids are confident they will complete their agenda with victory on home soil. But Rivero's boys believe they will end their long-distance trip to Egypt with an impressive performance. This is the second leg semi-final clash of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Experience the thrilling encounter of African football. Pyramids FC versus Orlando Pirates this Friday, 25 April at 7:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC 2, and SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
In an apartment far, far away.
Mara Springs is not that far, Mos.
Who's the narrator here?
Sorry.
exists a room dedicated to who Morena refers to as the GOAT. From his very first soccer boots, right down to the shirt that he wore in his final World Cup, Morena has it all. Ask Morena anything about the GOAT, and the answer will roll off his tongue like second nature. Morena is not just obsessed. Morena is the GOAT's super fan.
Uzwile boy, it's me, super fan.
Yeah, sure, boy. Tune in to Superfan Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. on S3 and watch contestants compete in challenges related to their favorite artists, ultimately lip-syncing to determine the ultimate superfan.
Every person, no matter who you are, what music you're inclined to listen to, and what you do with your weekends, you need a weekend playlist. It's that musical mix of music that accompanies the lazy weekends, whether catching up with friends and family or just taking some time to reflect. Tune in to The Soundtrack of Your Life with me, Ernest Pillay, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4 on SAFM.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, let's continue with the open line. Loward, you're in Gauteng. Good morning. Hello, Loward. All right, not sure what's happening there. Tulani, you're in Ladysmith. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to your listeners. Look, we as South Africans are an outcome of a negotiated settlement, out of a compromise. There has never been a revolution. So, on each and every impasse, we cannot celebrate as winners or as losers. Hence, the outcome of the 29th of May talk to that we have to converge more, we have to engage more, we have to compromise more. I guess this is not a last case which would require South Africans to put their heads together when you look at the outcomes of those elections. So I think it's good that parties of various ideological backgrounds have converged and came up with a resolution, with the exclusion of DA though, which chose to create an impasse and disable a government out of a petty discussion. I'm saying this because I have never heard a credible proposition as an alternative to 0.5%. And having said that, there is no alternative without any consequence on South African citizens. Because there is no money in a vault elsewhere kept waiting to be drawn into the fiscus. It has to come at a cost. If you don't raise VAT, I'm just putting this as a hypothetical question, you have to go to the global markets to get capital. We know what are the implications thereof. So I think we have to broaden our thinking, broaden our trust, continue to engage. This 0.5 VAT thing is not the last. The next one is going to come. So to sit back and rejoice as victors and the vanquish, it is not helping in any way from where I'm standing.
Tulani, I like the approach that you're taking around just how much effort, collective effort has gone into this. But I'm surprised by your exclusion of the DA. While we can debate their motives, while we can debate their interests in pursuing the political strategy that they did, they have very much been a significant part of this effort, especially as partners in the GNU.
DA vacillated, you see. EFF, MK, well, those must be excused. They've never accepted responsibility from inception. But DA in particular, it vacillated when it said it is rejecting a VAT, any VAT hike for that matter. And on the basis that it's going to disadvantage the poor. But as it was engaged further, it raised its discomfort around BELAP Act, around expropriation bill, and around BEE, around foreign policy as pursued currently. Now, they were not acting in good faith. If they were representing the poor, they should have stuck with that argument to say the poor are going to be disadvantaged. In actual fact, they are hiding the fact that they are excluded in the exemption of the goods that are commonly consumed by the poor people. They are not within the bracket. They will have to fork out more or continue to pay more, because I think they are coming from the sense that you can't share. We are pursuing a cross-subsidization kind of values as this country. Those who are able, who can afford, must support those who cannot, so that we build a more equal society. Thank you, Ma.
All right. Tulani out in Ladysmith. That's his view there. Lowered in Gauteng, you're back on the line.
Yeah, a quick bite, Cathy. I agree with a lot of people who have been ventilating their sentiments in the VAT debate. And then the ANC have not covered itself in glory due to opposition to the VAT hiking. And I can juxtapose this with what happened in Mpumalanga, the Department of Education there, for that laptop purchasing saga. Because the premier there, he has to do something tangible to indicate to lo and behold that they are serious about the corruption, which is perceived to be done by mostly the ANC leaders. So, what I can say in this matter, Cathy, is that ANC, the advisors going forward, they have to advise these leaders in a very positive way, because some of the listeners, they mentioned that Mr. Godongwana is not alone in this. So it means the advisors of these ministers going forward, they have to be very open-minded about the repercussions of something of this nature, because it is not covering our glorious movement in a lighter note.
All right. All right, Lowered, let's leave it there. Lowered, in Gauteng. All right, that wraps up the hour. We've gone through it so quickly. It's 10 o'clock. Time for the latest news update.
In our top stories, Action SA weighs in on VAT hike reversal, and Trump accuses Zelensky of harming Ukraine peace negotiations. Good morning. Action SA says it's proud of being a constructive opposition party that contributed to the reversal of the 0.5 percentage point VAT increase. The party made recommendations to the report of the Standing Committee on Finance that National Treasury be given 30 days to find alternatives to the tax hike. It says although it voted in favour of the passing of the fiscal framework and revenue proposals, its position was clear that it was against a VAT hike. Action SA Parliamentary Leader Ethel Trollop says now there are parties who are claiming victory that's not theirs.
What is really interesting about this decision is that it just shows that in South Africa, if you talk together, talk to each other to sort out any impasse, it's much better than recriminating and litigating. And we've said from the beginning as Action SA that we don't want South Africans to pay more VAT, and that we came up with recommendations about how to avert that. And people called it a quaint solution, and they indicated that we had no idea what we were doing. Well, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We had every idea what we were doing, and it's proof that if you cooperate and work together, you can solve any problem.
Meanwhile, the DA has welcomed the reversal of the 0.5% VAT increase. The IEC says it's waiting for a report from the Municipal Demarcation Board on the demarcation of boundaries ahead of the 2026 local government elections. The board has 6 months to finalize the demarcation exercise. This came out of a media briefing by IEC officials in Pretoria. Commission Deputy Chief Electoral Officer Masiho Shiburi.
The number of wards are determined on the basis of the number of councillors determined. For example, if a municipality has 20 councillors determined, the law provides that half of those councillors must represent wards. There will be a change in the configuration of the number of wards, and we will only know that when the MDB hands over the ward boundaries finally at the end of October.
4 prison warders from the Mangaung Correctional Centre in Bloemfontein have been charged with murder and assault following the death of inmate Mpum Kumbeni. They appeared briefly in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court. They were arrested on Tuesday. The case has been postponed to Friday for a formal bail application. Kamogelo Tsotetsi reports.
The 4 accused have been charged with murder and 3 counts of assault with the intent to cause grievous bodily harm. On the 11th of March, the late Mpom Kumbeni and 3 other inmates were interrogated and allegedly assaulted over misplaced money amounting to 800 rands. The incident happened after a raid was conducted without the knowledge of a temporary manager at the center, who was supposed to be part of that operation. A case of murder was opened after post-mortem revealed that the inmate died due to pepper spray complications and blunt force trauma.
The NPA has enhanced its team of experts as it considers an appeal of the controversial televangelist Timothy Omotoso's judgment. The team includes sexual offences prosecutors with senior counsel. They are studying the transcript together with 3 other relevant decisions that were made during the trial. Omotoso was arrested in 2017 on multiple charges, including sexual assault, human trafficking and racketeering. He was acquitted of all charges earlier this month. The NPA says it will decide whether to appeal based on the Memorandum of Advice and Senior Counsel's opinion. U.S. President Donald Trump has accused Volodymyr Zelensky of harming peace negotiations after the Ukrainian leader said he could never recognize occupied Crimea as Russian territory. On social media, Trump claimed a peace deal was very close, but said Zelensky's statement risked prolonging the killing. Meanwhile, Zelensky said emotions had run high in recent negotiations, but insisted it had been constructive. The BBC's Sarah Smith has more.
There's a very clear sense here that time is running out for this process, but that's largely because Donald Trump is very clearly losing patience with it. The threat is that he will walk away. We could see from that social media post where he thinks the problem is. He is putting most of the blame and therefore most of the pressure on President Zelensky. Nothing like the same amount of pressure is being heaped on Vladimir Putin to agree to a deal.
Recapping the top story, Action SA says it's proud of being a constructive opposition party that contributed to the reversal of the 0.5 percentage point VAT increase. The party made recommendations to the report of the Standing Committee on Finance that National Treasury be given 30 days to find alternatives to the tax hike. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105 FM in Mokopane.
The wait is over. I've been hustling, grinding, and now it's time for the glow up you've been waiting for. Unapologetically made the bay. From the grind to the glam. Anele Zondo The Glow Up on Saturdays at 8 p.m. only on SABC 1, Mzansi, for sure.
We all have dreams. Some people dream to be astronauts, while others want to yell, Vimba, as they chase that elusive shoplifter sprinting out and into Diamond Walk. Others might look at a broomstick and think to themselves that witchcraft might be the way to go. The possibilities are endless. But for Hollywood stars Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, their dreams is to make it big in the English football leagues. Tune into Welcome to Wrexham as the duo aim to turn Wrexham AFC into an underdog story that the world can root for, bringing hope and change to the community. Welcome to Wrexham, Saturdays at 3 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
El Clasico is here. Barcelona takes on Real Madrid in the Copa del Rey final. And you can catch every moment on S3 or stream live on SABC+. Watch two of the world's biggest teams fight for Spanish football's ultimate trophy. Don't miss out on the heart-pounding action. Head to sabcplus.com to register right now. Or tune into S3 on Saturday 26 April at 9:30 p.m. for the live broadcast. This is the Copa del Rey final. Barcelona versus Real Madrid. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport, your home of great football.
For the love of the game.
Stay ahead of the financial game. Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights on SAFM Market Update. Brought to you by SIPS, the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, shaping the future of procurement one smart decision at a time.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on The Talking Point. Welcome to the second hour of the show as we lead conversations that move us. Coming up in this hour, it's a Thursday, so we would ordinarily just be doing Municipal Watch. We are still going to be continuing with that program, but we're also watching for the briefing that is scheduled to take place by various political parties on the decision to reverse VAT. That briefing is scheduled to get underway any minute now. We'll take you live to it as soon as it starts. Before we do, though, lots of your WhatsApp voice notes on different issues, but mostly around the VAT. Let's play some of those.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Cathy, morning. I think the DA is just wanted credit where it's not due. Because the DA was giving conditions to vote for the hike, for the VAT hike. He said the ANC must withdraw the laws. So it was not honest enough for the DA to say they can claim that they didn't want the VAT to be applied. They wanted the VAT to applied. Unfortunately, Action SA is the one who promised South Africa to say, we're going to fight for this VAT, not the DA. The DA was so far away from the reality. Thank you.
The credit for the reversal of the 0.5% VAT should be given to many parties like Busa, Action SA, Rise Munzanzi, UDM, and the likes. Remember, even when they voted for the framework, they said this 0.5% must be looked at. DA, MK, EFF voted against, but DA was trading it. If ANC had agreed to reverse in NHI, Bella, and the expropriation with that compensation, it was willing to sacrifice the 2%. We were going to have a 2% by now if ANC had agreed to that. So that was a very bad trade, not in the interest of the poor, but to protect the interest of white, which was accrued during apartheid. But ANC has been shown that it's a 40% party, and local government election next year, 2029, voters were going to pull the red carpet under the feet of the ANC. Learning.
Cathy, that is Munyai from Soshanguve. I just wanted to say this issue of VAT increase. It was just a strategy for the DA and the ANC in order to increase the DA support in 2026. Nothing else. Bye.
Good morning, Sisi Cathy and SAFM listeners. It's Mike from Cape Town. Sisi Cathy, we cannot thank the finance minister by withdrawing the percentage, but we should have to thank the parties, opposition parties, which were putting the pressure. It's opposition parties which were putting the pressure. If it was not the opposition parties putting the pressure, the minister was still going to implement it. Thank you.
Hi, Kathy. Just imagine South Africa without DA or Freedom Front Plus here in South Africa, whereby the ANC, privileged family or groups looting from the poor and come and blame the racism. The DA fight for VAT hike, which is a benefit for all. I'm giving credit. Let's give credit for the DA and vote for the DA in future. Thank you. My name is Les.
From Engutu to Durban, twins born with one dream, Maskandi greatness, millions, fame and family. Will money tear them apart or unite them? Brand new telenovela, Amalanga Wafani, starts April 2025, weekdays at 6:30 on SABC 1.
Fadlu Davis is back home to finish what he started in East Africa. But Steve Barker and his boys believe they can find an equalizer in their own backyard. Stellies collides with Wekundu Wamsimbazi. This is the second leg semi-final battle of the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup. Catch the spectacular contest of African football. Stellenbosch FC versus Simba Sports Club. This Sunday, 27 April at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM Music. Good times, good memories.
I'm just lighting somebody's fire.
Old school sounding so good. SAFM Music with you wherever you go.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
And you can correct me that the DRC government is your enemy, and now if you're saying the South African government is fighting alongside them, can we also say that they're also your enemy?
No, I think that the South African Defence Force that is fighting in Sami DRC, the SADC force that came to fight alongside the Congolese army, should not be there because they are involved in a fight that they do not understand, that your population, I have seen, does not understand or support.
Yolande Makolo, who's the spokesperson for the Rwandan government.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. Missed it? Find the podcast at safm.co.za. Municipal Watch, bringing your local issues on the national agenda. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Well, for Municipal Watch today, we're looking at the issue of unused grants that municipalities often send back to National Treasury for whatever reasons that they may put on the table. When we look at the previous financial year, 12.8 billion rand of these grants were spent, and this is of a total of 44.1 billion rand worth of conditional grants that were allocated to municipalities. Now, conditional grants are funds that are allocated by the national government to municipalities to cover services including infrastructure development, housing, and public transport upgrades. According to Section 21 of the Division of Revenue Act, any conditional allocation or portion not spent by the end of the financial year must go back to the National Revenue Fund. And often then what happens is that the allocation for the upcoming financial year will then be reduced in line with the expenditure of the previous year. So why are municipalities sending money back to Treasury when there are clearly so many things that this money can be used towards? Mohlahlana Holeni is Chief Group Advisor at Ndiso Consulting Group. Mohlahlana, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to the listeners.
Dikeledi Direko is a member of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on COGTA. Good morning, Dikeledi.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to the listeners at home.
Zinzi Mpatlele is a manager, budget and reporting. It says Polokwane municipality, but do we have a Polokwane municipality? Or is it the Capricorn? It's a Capricorn district. Zinzi, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to all the listeners tuning in this morning. It's a pleasure to join you. We have Polokwane municipality and we have Capricorn district as well.
All right, thank you. Thanks for that clarity. Well, let's start off then just with understanding these conditional grants, Mohlahlana, and what the purpose behind these grants has always been.
Yeah, so I think, grants, as you would put it, are appropriations that come from the fiscus, which is coming through the Division of Revenue Act, which are then allocated to municipalities and can be allocated to other organs of state as well. But specifically, we're talking about municipalities. And as the word suggests, it's conditional. So there are certain conditions that must be met for the funds to be firstly released, and secondly, how those funds are going to be spent. And they are normally tied to a particular grant, which is to address, various things. It could be a USDG, for instance, which is, the Urban Sustainable Development Grant. It could be your MIGs. It could be grants that the National Treasury have fashioned and created so that they can use them as transfer mechanisms, which is the funding mechanism of various municipalities. So grants are important because they support the equitable share in a way that, the equitable share may be used mainly for the operational issues and to close whatever gap that may be there, whether it be through the indigents, the free basic services, and various other items which are operational in nature. And grants, may tend to be more capex in nature, and even though you also have grants which are also cover the OPEX of certain items. So grants are just a funding mechanism which National Treasury makes funding available to municipalities in the greater scheme of the Division of Revenue Act.
What is the process, Mohlahlana, in as far as the criteria used for the allocation of these grants? We know that municipalities aren't necessarily getting the same amount of money, particularly to do the same thing. So how is that allocated from National Treasury? And when it comes to these funds, are they particularly ring-fenced towards the delivery of certain services?
So the Divisional of Revenue Act is, if I may put it, the manual behind how funds are allocated to municipalities. Equitable share with its own formula, but a similar extension, or at least an extension of the same formula that may be applied for equitable share, can also be used or is used for determining the grants that go into those municipalities. But to take you back in terms of that particular formula, it considers the population of a municipality, considers the economic circumstances within that municipality, whether there is industry. So a large part of it, as you would have heard, is driven by what the statistics coming from the census, which is from Statistics South Africa, how they then characterize each one of the regions or the districts and the municipalities, whether there's a growth in population, there's a decline in population. But grants as well also look at, the backlogs of various infrastructure that must be laid down, and it looks at the service delivery in terms of how they can accelerate the service delivery within various municipalities. And those municipalities that typically don't have industry tend to be given slightly more in terms of what the allocations would be from an equitable share, as well as from the conditional grants that are given. And so those conditional grants, again, I go back to the word conditional. It then suggests that they must be ring-fenced for the purpose that they are meant for, and not for any other purpose. So in other words, you shouldn't pay salaries using a conditional grant. You shouldn't go and implement, whatever infrastructure which is not part of the conditions which are covered by that particular grant. So they are supposed to be ring-fenced so that they are channeled into the areas where they are supposed to be. Hence the reporting that is done on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, to show what the progress is with regards to the expenditure of those grants towards achieving the goals which the municipalities promised, or at least have laid down to National Treasury that they are going to be fulfilling.
Dikeledi, it sounds pretty clear-cut in as far as the intention behind these grants and why it is that they exist in the first place. So why are we seeing that only half of these allocations are being spent, and what does it tell us about what is happening at a local government level?
Thank you, Cathy. This grant, as Mr. Mohlahlana has just indicated, these grants are governed by strict conditions and deadlines, and underspending of mismanagement of these funds limits the service delivery and has a broader implications for governance and public trust. What we've observed as a portfolio committee as the challenges to resulting to underspending of these funds and mismanagement are as follows. The first one is an issue of capacity and constraints. Many municipalities lack skilled personnel, and what we also observe is that municipal budget is structured in a way that larger percentage of budget comes from the revenue collection of that particular municipality, and the smaller percentage comes from the grants. So if municipalities are unable to collect revenue, they end up tapping into these grants that are conditional, and they then use that money for the operational costs. And if they were, and when they are supposed to account for those grants that they have used, they are unable to account to. And if you are unable to account on the money that you have just received, you are unable to get another tranche of the money. And what also is a challenge is that governance and political instability in the municipalities, where there are political interference in the processes of the municipality. We also have poor project planning and preparations. Grant funds are often submitted without proper feasibility studies, technical designs, and costs, and all those things that are needed for compliance of that money. We also have issues of corruption and procurement inefficiencies, whereby the process of procurement are tampered with or are delayed and ended up the money going back to the national treasury. And what is also important is we also experience weak oversight and accountability. Remember that the council has a mandate to ensure that they run the municipality as per the roles and responsibilities of each and every stakeholder within the municipality. So if there's no proper accountability and oversight, it means that there's a weak audit control, ineffective municipal public accounts committee, which reduce transparency and follow up on the project. So those are the weaknesses that we also observed. And as a result of that, we end up having consequences of underspending, which is also delays in service delivery for essential services such as your water, sanitation, and electricity. We also observe whereby the allocation of the money will then be taken from the municipalities to try to deprive that particular community with the services that they were supposed to do. And if that money is taken back, it simply means that some of the projects of the infrastructure will not be able to be completed. And as a result of that, they will also reduce the economic activities in that particular municipality, because if your infrastructure is not correct, is not right, then people will not also invest in that particular municipality. However, as a result of that, because it's something that we have observed for a very long period, we then had engagement with the Department of COGTA and Treasury on a remedial solution to this particular challenge, whereby we then agreed that National COGTA will need to strengthen municipality in terms of the technical and managerial support. They also need to utilize their implementing agency, which is the Municipal Infrastructure Support Agency. And in case when municipalities failing to spend the money or they are misusing the municipality, then the National COGTA must introduce Schedule 16, whereby they will then have to implement those projects on behalf of the municipality.
When one thinks about these allocations, Dikeledi, there would obviously be a certain level of wisdom from the Treasury looking at the state of affairs in a particular municipality and then seeing just what kind of money it can be contributing towards certain aspects, whether it's infrastructure, as was mentioned, or housing delivery. So this issue of capacity, it's a big concern, because at the point that Treasury allocates this money, is there a sense that the municipalities would be well equipped to spend it? Why are we seeing the capacity challenges that are there to the extent that we are?
Yeah, the problem of capacity is that you sometimes wonder what is it? Is it maybe the issue of capacity or lack of willingness for people to do what they are getting paid for? Because when you look at the organogram of municipalities, you'll then realize that in other municipalities, they are well established in terms of their different departments where they have skilled people, while on others there are those that does not have skilled people. But even on those ones that have skilled people, they are unable to deliver. So hence I'm saying it's because of different challenges that we have in the municipality. In other municipalities, you'll realize that the problem is not necessarily capacity, but the problem is political interference or it's corruption. In other municipalities, as you indicated, there's a challenge of capacity building. That is why we are encouraging our municipality that they must now start to perform job evaluation and skills audit in their municipality, because we'll realize that in a finance department, instead of having people who understand finance, you have someone who's got a teaching, of which is not relevant to that particular department. You go to the infrastructure department, people with relevant skills are not there, but you have human resource. So that's one of the things that we also observed in the municipality, that there's a skills mismatch. That is why now we also have the National School of Government that is going to partnership with our institutions so that they can also assist in capacity building and professionalization. And we will also have to improve our monitoring and evaluation, whereby the Treasury must get annual quarterly report for municipalities in order to monitor the process in terms of the spending of the municipalities.
Okay, we're going to continue the conversation in a moment. It's now 10:30, time for your latest headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. On the news headlines on SAFM, I am Ondelamban, and a very good morning. The chairperson of the DA's Federal Council, Helen Zille, has hailed the reversal of the 0.5 VAT increase as a victory for the party. This as the DA applied for an interdict against the implementation of the value-added tax as adopted by the National Assembly in the Western Cape High Court. The grandson of the late Chief Albert Luthuli Jr. is expected to continue with his testimony at the Pietermaritzburg High Court this morning. And India has closed its main border crossing with Pakistan over Tuesday's attack on tourists in the Indian-administered Kashmir region, which killed 26 people. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand currently trading at 18 rand 63 to the dollar, 24 rand 77 to the pound, and 21 rand 21 to the euro. Markets in Asia were mainly lower at the closing bell. The JSE mainly weaker during mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe have extended losses. Gold is trading at $3,333, platinum $969 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $66.69 a barrel.
#SAFM Talking Point.
Municipal Watch, bringing your local issues on the national agenda. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. We're focusing then this morning on municipal grants. These are the conditional grants that are issued to municipalities for delivery of certain services. Looking at the previous financial year, 44.1 billion rand was the amount of money allocated towards conditional grants. Only 12.8 billion rand of that was spent. The rest of it went back to National Treasury. Why is it that we're seeing this phenomena? Cathy Mohlahlana is Chief Group Advisor at Ndiso Consulting, Dikeledi Direko, Member of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on COCTA, and Zinzi Mpahlele is a Manager, Budget and Reporting at the Polokwane Municipality. Zinzi, let me give you a chance then to also weigh in on this conversation. And because you manage some of these processes within a municipality, you can speak about just what some of the challenges might be that municipalities face with spending these allocations.
Thank you so much, Cathy. So we have a combination of reasons, structural, operational, and human reasons. We have poor project planning and readiness, as the lady has already mentioned, whereby you find that many projects are not shovel-ready when the budget is approved, and this includes the designs, the approved business plans, the environmental land use approvals. And without these, the funds can't be legally spent, even if they are available. We have delayed procurement processes where supply chain management delays slows everything down. Tenders take months to advertise, evaluate, and award. And bid committees do not meet regularly, and by the time the service providers are appointed, it's too late to spend within the financial year. Then we also have capacity constraints, as the lady has already mentioned as well, where we lack technical staff like your engineers, project managers, and planners. And the finance team might not necessarily be trained adequately to monitor the capital project or to project cash flows adequately. Sometimes when the budget exists, but the execution capability is missing. Then in terms of the politics changing the priorities as well, you find that projects might be reprioritized mid-year due to a political shift. And then, of course, comes SCM deviations that will stall the progress as well. We have a gap between the political promises and the practical readiness. And then we also have community disruptions and service delivery protests where worksites are often disrupted by community protests or business forums. And these delays, they push projects beyond the financial year, causing under expenditure. And in some instances, you find that there's lack of integration between departments, the engineering, planning, finance, and supply chain management teams not necessarily working in sync. And then for capital projects to succeed, we know that these teams must collaborate continuously, and many municipalities are still working in silos. So in short, the grant was there, but the system was not ready. Capital and conditional grant spending requires not just money, it requires systems, skills, speed, and synergies. So without those, even well-funded projects will fail to take off or finish on time. Thank you very much, Cathy.
I'm just thinking about the process, Zinzi, that goes into planning for projects in municipalities. Of course, by now, municipalities have come to expect conditional grants, right? Even where there has been underspending, more often than not, they're likely to still get some form of allocation. When does the planning for it begin? Because I would assume that the planning is something that is ongoing, that has more of a long-term view than waiting to see what the allocation is going to be during any given financial year, and then begin sort of deciding what it is that can or should be done with those monies.
Okay. So, the planning begins in August. according to the municipal process plan. And then what you'll also see is that the Division of Revenue Bill allocates the funding over 3 years. So even the budgets that are approved as we speak, the projects are multi-year. However, we still have all these bottlenecks, regardless of the system allowing us to plan for a multi-year project. However, we are still not winning because of the limitations that I've just mentioned now. So the system allows us to plan forward. However, we do still experience such challenges. Thanks.
Mohlahlana, what needs to be done? Because again, it's very much a wasted opportunity, because if we look at what the repercussions of this happening year on year, it means that a lot is lost out on in as far as service delivery, simply because municipalities are unable to spend the money.
So very practically, I think from the responses that were given by fellow panelists as well as Dikeledi, the issues of capacity need to be addressed, very, very urgently. Capacity means that the vacancies that are supposed to be filled are filled on time and are filled with skilled people, as opposed to having acting positions upon acting. Because what acting does is it weakens the institutional structure, where someone would have to leave the job that they are doing to go and perform another job, which someone else would have to do the same. So it shifts the attention of the institution. So very practically is the filling of vacancies, but maybe even before that is to relook at the structure to understand how that organizational structure is geared towards facilitating the planning aspect, towards the implementation aspect, and also supporting the procurement of those services and the monitoring or project management thereof. Secondly, the establishment of project management units within municipalities are crucial, because they are supposed to be looking at how the expenditure or even the planning of projects, the packaging of projects well in advance, such that when the project or the funding is remitted to the municipalities, those projects are ready, the procurement has already been undertaken. So there also needs to be a strengthening of the project management units within municipalities, so that they can also be able to think ahead, a year or two ahead. And this is how it can also be achieved, because if you look at the MTREF is a 3-year horizon in which the budget has been projected. So there are no surprises as to what's going to happen year 1, year 2, and year 3. So there needs to be actually a long-range planning which looks into how the MTREF has been crafted, as well as to look at the need through the IDP and have a master plan that plans ahead of time, so that there is no jitters when it comes to the implementation of projects where funds are lost. And that is how, at least, that can be achieved. Where perhaps there is a lack of capacity, municipalities are and should be able to look at, external support. The issues of MISA have been mentioned, or the institution of MISA has been mentioned, and many other state organs that have the implementation capacity as well as capability, as well as looking after as well at the private sector to augment that capacity. Because the bigger thing here is that if you have not planned for the expenditure and packaged the projects are not going to be sent out into the market for bidders to respond to them. So planning actually turns out to be a most crucial function, because that's where the project can be packaged. And perhaps, that is something that can be sourced temporarily, so that the planning and the master plans are in place, and then the implementation can take place. So those are literally 3 options, or at least in combination, that those options can be implemented to improve the expenditure and the service delivery in essence of those grants. Because it's not just expenditure, but it's the impact on the ground.
We're going to continue with this conversation shortly.
El Clasico is here. Barcelona takes on Real Madrid in the Copa del Rey final. And you can catch every moment on S3 or stream live on SABC+. Watch 2 of the world's biggest teams fight for Spanish football's ultimate trophy. Don't miss out on the heart-pounding action. Head to sabcplus.com to register right now or tune into S3 on Saturday 26 April at 9:30 p.m. for the live broadcast. This is the Copa del Rey final. Barcelona versus Real Madrid, proudly brought to you by SABC Sport, your home of great football. For the love of the game.
Catch Color Your Plate this Tuesday evening at 7:30.
I want to see family in your meals.
I'm just watching how nervous they are.
The atmosphere is intense.
I'm so overwhelmed today.
I'm panicking right now.
I just made a big mistake.
It looks like we've got a little thief because ingredients are going missing.
It's a me and you thing, okay? Don't tell anybody.
That's Color Your Plate this Tuesday evening at 7:30 only on SABC2.
Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM.
It's an interesting time with regard to the Trump administration.
South Africa, 60%, 30%, and they've got some bad things going on in South Africa. You know, we're paying them billions of dollars, and we cut the funding because a lot of bad things are happening in South Africa. The fake news ought to be looking at it. They don't want to report it.
Of course, everybody is doing a calculation and speculating on what could be included. The safest thing to do is to get confirmation from the US as to how they arrived at the number.
The African countries almost have to think of what I would call the coalition of the wounded, looking into various countries and saying who has been badly affected by the US and how can they open up the room for engagement on that.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m. Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo. #SAFM Talking Point.
All right, we're going to continue our conversation on Municipal Watch shortly, looking at conditional grants and understanding some of the reasons why municipalities are unable to spend these funds. Let's pause the conversation, however, to take you to the briefing by political parties. Beginning that briefing is the ANC's Mahlengi Bengu.
#SAFM Talking Point.
We will revise proposals within 30 days. This position has earned the support of a parliamentary majority, providing the democratic and legislative legitimacy for a revised fiscal path, one that keeps the people's interests at heart. Furthermore, parties are committed to a government-led expenditure review in order to maximize efficiencies in government spending. The integrity of this process must be underscored. It was Parliament, not the courts, not unelected bodies that led the resolution. This is a reaffirmation of constitutionalism and a victory for a democratic process. We are alive to the urgency that this process now demands from us to support the passing of the money bills and ensure that they are passed. We call on the Finance and Appropriations Committees in Parliament to move with urgency and ensure that the nation has a budget. All parliamentarians must ensure that we pass the bills and act in accordance with the constitutional mandate. As diverse political parties, we are united in our commitment to fiscal responsibility that is neither detached from reality nor blind to inequality. We are bound by a common principle that budgetary decisions must not deepen the suffering of the poor nor compromise long-term economic development. It is worth noting that the approved budget framework includes important interventions aimed at advancing South Africa's development. These include increased allocations for transport and logistics, infrastructure, support for dam projects to improve long-term water supply, additional funding to strengthen public health care and safety, and resources to support early childhood development. The framework also enables the extension of social relief of distress grant and opens opportunities within the public service, particularly for young people. Together, These measures reflect a shared commitment to a budget that is responsive to the people, promotes inclusive growth, and upholds the principle of fiscal responsibility. We also affirm that fiscal consolidation must not mean austerity for the vulnerable. Alternatives must preserve the social wage and enable inclusive economic growth. Treasury, in collaboration with Parliament, must continue to ensure sound, equitable, and developmental financing. This is not about claiming credit or asserting ideological dominance. It is about taking our role in ensuring that there's a responsibility in governing and defending the foundational values of the democratic project we all serve. We do wish to extend our appreciation to the Minister of Finance and the team at National Treasury for respecting the letter and spirit of parliamentary consultation and for engaging with parties on a bilateral basis. Appreciation to members of Parliament across party lines who conducted themselves with discipline and dedication to the constitutional mandate during this time of the budget impasse. To parties, and we wish to underscore this, to parties who are outside of the government of national unity, who acted with resolve to resolve the impasse in the interest of national unity and the stability of governance. And above all, to the people of South Africa, whose voices, petitions, and unwavering demand for fairness guided our actions and shaped the outcome. We also recognize all participating parties for honoring the ethos of multi-party democracy, respecting differences, embracing collaboration, and placing the country above power. This is a victory for the people and for democratic institutions. This is not a victory for one single party, nor is it about who claims the loudest voice. This is a people's victory. It is a quiet but profound triumph of democratic institutions, as well as that of Parliament acting in an activist nature, which is expected of a democratic parliament. The withdrawal of the VAT increase, the reaffirmation of parliamentary oversight, including executive role in implementing, and the recalibration of fiscal priorities together represent a democratic maturity that must be defended and deepened. We recommit ourselves to the path of constructive dialogue, to ethical governance, and to ensuring that public resources uplift our people, stimulate inclusive economic growth, and bring us closer to a truly just and prosperous society. As I conclude, the next steps will include the following. A revised finance bill is expected to be tabled in Parliament. The legislative process that follows will be monitored and shaped by the shared developmental priorities, including shared strides towards inclusive economic growth, as expressed in the statement. We will continue to communicate transparently with the public and stand ready across party lines to ensure that the interests of the people remain the center of our fiscal policy and public governance. We end there. At this point, I'd like to call on the Secretary General of the African National Congress to deliver the message on behalf of the ANC.
Thank you, Mohlahlana, on behalf of all political parties reading that statement. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, viewers at home, and all South Africans, colleagues from different political parties. First and foremost, as the ANC.
The Seagulls believe their fighting spirit will match their style of football as they chase valuable points.
Pedro in front of the Leicester fans against Hermanson, and he rolls it home. João Pedro gives Albion the lead.
While the Hammers have a big task to prevail away from home.
Clips it in there, and Bowen! And West Ham United have turned this game around.
This is the Premier League. Catch the nail-biting action. Brighton and Hove Albion versus West Ham United FC on Saturday, 26 April at 3:30 p.m. live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC+. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Sunday nights are about to get big on S3. We have some of the biggest movie titles that will take you on adventures that you simply cannot miss. Thomas arrives in a glade at the center of a giant maze. The race to escape the maze leads him to a journey. Should they escape, all questions will be answered. Tune into The Maze Runner, Sunday, the 27th of April. Maze Runner Darth Cure on the 4th of May. Maze Runner The Scorch Trials on the 11th of May. S3 Blockbuster Movies, Sundays at 7 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
These are the weekend shows on SAFM. Music of Africa with Shayla Ndikumana. The Weekend View with Bongiwe Zwane. The Jet Set Breakfast with Michelle Constant. Seasons with Khomotso KG Mwekezi. The Soundtrack of Your Life with Ernest Pillay. Weekend Sundowner Classics with Kutlwano Masote. Spotlight with Zai Khan. The Weekend with John Kherika. Shifting Your Lens with Bertha Charuma. This is SAFM. Municipal Watch, bringing your local issues on the national agenda. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
All right, we continue the conversation on the talking point. You heard then the statement on behalf of the political parties. In as far as the decision to reverse VAT is concerned, we'll have more coverage of that in the 11 o'clock hour. For now, we're going to continue with Municipal Watch. I've got a few voice notes here that are speaking to this issue of capacity at municipalities and the level of skills that are resulting in municipalities being unable to spend money.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Cathy, it's quite unpalatable that municipalities can allow money to go back to Treasury when there are such heaps and heaps of challenges confronting communities. For instance, here in Mangaung, there is no street without pothole. Rubbish is all over. The graves are impassable. Water leakages are out of this world. And potholes are the order of the day. This is because we have councillors and officials of the municipality who do not have the interest of the communities they claim to be governing at heart. It is absolutely unacceptable that we find ourselves victims of such people who have lost touch with the ground, with the people on the ground. Mpho Bloom.
Good morning, Cathy. I'm a bit confused. Your guest says they don't have skilled people. So who do they then hire for positions of CFO and municipal manager? Do they just take anybody just so that they fill the post? I don't understand what she means or what the implications of that statement are. Who do they then place in those crucial positions like the CFO and the municipal manager? They just take anybody? Comrade that they know from somewhere, even if they don't have the skills. I don't understand. And why would that be the case?
Yeah, thanks for those voice notes. Look, Dabo, it sounds to me that the problem goes beyond just the positions of municipal managers, CFOs. As you can hear, there's a need for other highly specialized individuals within municipalities, and often they just don't have that. But Dikeledi, let me come to you. The point made by one of our listeners that this is really a situation that shouldn't be happening. That this is something that is actually deplorable, the fact that it's happening.
Yes, Cathy. On the issue of the capacity constraint, what I meant is that in the municipality, you've got different departments. And other municipalities will realize that instead of them prioritizing the finance and the infrastructure department, they will then decide to prioritize community services instead of this one. Then when you go to this department of infrastructure, you realize that there's a lot of vacancies that are not filled. Or in other municipalities, you realize that there are people who are employed, but there's a skills mismatch. Like in infrastructure, you get people who've got qualifications in management. And in that particular department, you need your engineers, your project managers. And the other challenge in that particular municipality is that the people who are highly qualified on the scarce skills doesn't want to work for government because of the salary scale, which is not computable to the private sector. That's what I meant in terms of capacity constraints. And when you don't have a full complement of staff in your department in the municipality, it simply means that your planning is going to suffer. Because you'll have a plan, and then you need people who will also be overseeing the project. So if you don't have engineers, but you have those ones who finance, who have matured and were able to get tenders, advertise and appoint tenders for that particular project. But if you don't have those who are going to oversee that particular project, it simply means that you are also going to fail as the municipality.
Zinzi, when you look at what it's going to take to turn things around, to change the situation, we heard the ideas that Mohlahlana shared. Are these practical? Are these things that municipalities can do?
Yes, Cathy, these are all things that it's possible to do within a municipality. But we also have to face that one of the biggest underlying problems that we face is the fact that we have a 5-year political cycle where you find that the leadership is not thinking beyond, like the long-term development horizon. And then that is why we are pushing for quick win projects, and then each new council, they change plans and then they start over. So these are normally the main basis for the delay. We do have, like for example, our CFO is a chartered accountant. We have about 4 chartered accountants in the municipality. All our Section 721 directors meet the minimum competencies. However, we also need to look at the disruption of continuity because of the leadership changes as well. So we have willing officials, but then the term of office as well plays a huge part. Thanks.
All right. Zinzi Mphahlele, let me thank you for your time. We're completely out of time for that conversation. It's now 11 o'clock, time for the latest news headlines. When we continue, we take our focus back to the VAT.
Thank you, Cathy. Top stories. DA hails the reversal of VAT increase and 2 men shot dead in Cape Town. For SAFM News, I am Ondalambana and a very good morning. The chairperson of the DA's Federal Council, Helen Zille, has hailed the reversal of the 0.5 VAT increase as a victory for the party. This as the DA applied for an interdict against the implementation of the value-added tax as adopted by the National Assembly in the Western Cape High Court. Earlier this morning, the National Treasury announced that the increase would be reversed. Zille says it was the pressure of the DA that led to the Finance Minister announcing the reversal of the VAT increase and not the negotiations that went on between smaller parties and the ANC.
Because a lot of negotiations had happened supposedly with the smaller parties before last Thursday, and yet last Thursday the Minister categorically said that the VAT increase would go ahead, and that there was indeed no alternative to it. So it was clear that the DA's court intervention was the pivotal intervening factor that has enabled the people of South Africa to come out victorious.
Meanwhile, Action SA says it has followed through on its commitment to stop the VAT hike. Earlier this month, the party voted in support of the fiscal framework, provided that the proposed VAT increase be scrapped. Action SA leader Herman Mashaba.
Remember, after our proposal, which we tabled in the Standing Committee on the 1st of April and in Parliament on the 2nd, the following day, we committed to South Africans that there won't be VAT come 1st of May. And a few days later, we submitted and we did communicate to South Africans so that we've submitted proposals to National Treasury to the value of just over 110 billion rands of other revenue streams. But obviously we needed to really give them the space to do that.
2 men have been shot dead outside a spaza shop at Wallaceden in Kraaifontein in Cape Town in a suspected extortion attack. Police spokesperson Joseph Swartboy says reports suggest that 4 men approached the shop and opened fire on the victims. He says 1 victim was declared dead at the scene and the other died in hospital. Swartboy says the 4 assailants fled the scene and are yet to be arrested. Veteran South African actor Donnie Mlangeni Nawa's memorial service will be held at the Soweto Theatre this afternoon, honouring his legacy. The 65-year-old award-winning actor died on the 16th of April. Mlangeni Nawa was best known for his iconic roles as Zeb Matabane in Isidingo, Laqasha in Skudis Nice, and Zakhe Mhlonga in the 90s drama Hlala Kwabafileyo. Dozens of MK party supporters are staging a protest against the visiting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky outside the Union buildings in Pretoria. The Ukrainian president is in the country and will meet with President Cyril Ramaphosa shortly to discuss ways of expanding bilateral cooperation in the areas of trade, agriculture and education. This is Zelensky's first visit to the country and follows President Ramaphosa's visit to Ukraine in 2023 as part of the African Peace Initiative at the height of the Russia-Ukraine war. Speaking to the media on the protest, MK party spokesperson Ntlamulo Ndlela.
We are saying that as Mkhonto West is, we're members of BRICS and Russia is an ally to BRICS. Ukraine is not associated with us in any way. So why are we even having these discussions with this individual? Why here? So Ramaphosa mustn't bring us problems that we don't have. And he himself is a liability. He is a problem because even the same GNU that he brought using the black vote and giving racists that went to Ukraine in the form of the DA, went and lobbied that same government, went and did a so-called fact-finding mission, only to find, by the way, that there was racism there against our own Africans when that war started. So please, Ramaphosa, you need to step down. This GNU of yours, you're all comedians, just like your international comedian that has shown up in the form of a president.
India has closed its main border crossing with Pakistan over Tuesday's attack on tourists in the Indian-administered Kashmir region, which killed 26 people. Authorities say 4 gunmen emerged from the forest at a resort near the town of Pahalgam and opened fire on visitors, but only targeting men. Delhi has long accused Pakistan of supporting armed groups in the Muslim-majority region, which Pakistan has strongly denied. The BBC's Yogita Lamaya reports.
This is a region that's not a stranger to conflict. It's faced an armed insurgency for more than 35 years. But rarely have we seen an attack directed at tourists on this scale.
Locals marched on the streets condemning the attack. "Stop the brutal murder of our guests," they chanted. Indian security forces are still searching for the attackers. What's happened will have deep ramifications for the region and for the already fraught ties between India and Pakistan.
Recapping the top story, the chairperson of the DA's Federal Council, Helen Zille, has hailed the reversal of the 0.5 VAT increase as a victory for the party. I am Mondelambana for SAFM News, headlines at 11:30.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105 FM in Polokwane.
The Red Devils want to add more heat in Cairo to make life difficult for Masandawana, but Kabuyelo refuse to shake and break. They are on a mission to elevate their game and march to the final with big smiles. It is do or die. This is the second leg semi-final encounter of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Catch the incredible action of African football. Al Ahly FC versus Mamelodi Sundowns FC. This Friday, 25 April at 5:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, S3, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The confession booth. A place where the sin-laden soul can offload their transgressions, all in the hopes of finding reprieve for their sins. Stolen your co-worker's lunch? Then the ordinary confession booth with your regular priest will do. But murdered your long-time nemesis and dumped their body in a vat of acid? Oh, then you better hope you're not in Father Brown's confession booth, because he is bent on catching all the bad guys. Tune into Father Brown, Mondays to Wednesdays at 9 p.m, only on S3. Open up.
The Weekend View with Bongiwe Zwane from 6 to 7 a.m.
Has the Democratic Alliance become an unwelcome GNU guest? That is the subject of our Sunday morning discussion. Tabira in Sukukune.
I totally disagree with what Professor Mayer say and Professor Kumede say, to say that the minister has performed well.
And some are saying that maybe you need more money to get a properly skilled prosecutor. Is that where the problem is? And is the NDPP, in your view, someone that can still continue to run this institution?
One, money cannot be the problem where there are challenges that can be resolved without money. There are about 6 senior positions in the NPA that are not filled, and those positions are funded. There is money for those.
Let us be frank and honest about the NPA. The NPA has lost its credibility on many fronts.
Hashtag SAFM Weekend View. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Hi, SAFM. I guess these parties that's holding a media briefing will never give the DA their due. We all know the DA pushed really hard for that not to be implemented, not to be hiked. I mean, we saw for ourselves how political parties who voted in favor of the fiscal framework were clapping hands and jumping for joy. And now they all want to claim victory. It's absurd. Teresa Cape Town.
Cathy, hi. This is the prodigal son from the Western Cape, man. This lady is talking absolute nonsense. How can it be a people's victory? They did not consider the people at all when they wanted to raise the VAT with 2% in the first stage. Man. The politicians just know how to spin, but yeah, not all of us are stupid, man. Nonsense. Have a good job. Bye-bye.
Hello, Kate. It's time in East London. You know, this ANC, it really needs to be taught a lesson, this ANC. Their arrogance is catching up with them slowly. We need to come together as South Africans and take down this ANC, because it has destroyed everything in this country. They have destroyed everything in this country. Even with this budget, they are trying to do the same. So there's nothing special that can fix anything that the ANC is saying today.
Good morning, Sisketi. This is Newcastle. On the matter of funds that are not being used at the local municipal level, the question is, the critical question here is, who's drafting the budget? It seems like those people, the people who's oversee the activities of the municipalities, they don't know about the budget. So who's draft the budget?
Morning, Cathy. Your guests put it correctly. Its issues are mismanagement and capacity in the municipalities to execute implementation of these grants. Work for a municipality in the technical department, we're working under the MEC grant for a small municipality. The technical team didn't even know how to present projects at their sitting. I literally, as a consultant, had to go in for the technical team of the municipality as a service provider to present on their behalf because they didn't even know how to do it. So it's that bad in some municipalities. I'll choose to remain anonymous, and one day I'll probably get a chance to tell you the full story of what happened in this particular municipality. Thank you, Cathy. Have a good day.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
Rise and shine every weekday morning on Expresso.
Now, whether it's a motivational Monday or even a Health Tuesday, this is the best way to start your day.
Let our trending tech keep you ahead of the curve.
Join us online and vote in our fashion poll.
Elevate your cooking skills every Wednesday.
It's the best and morning entertainment.
So wake up with us.
6 to 9 a.m. on S3.
Cheers.
Rise and Shine are not willing to drop their heads as they chase victory to maintain a good top half position. But Matsatsansa Pitori are in a deep hunt for 3 points to escape from danger. Catch the exciting battle of Mzansi's football, Polokwane City FC versus Supersport United FC on Saturday, 26 April at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC One. Then at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
All right, welcome to the show. It is 14 after 11 o'clock and gives us a chance to get into our final conversation of the day right here on the Talking Point, which is around the VAT hike, or the hike that is not to be, and the impact really that we can expect to feel on our grocery budgets. Of course, overnight, that decision coming out of the National Treasury saying that VAT would remain at 15%, pending the tabling of the relevant bills, which is the rates, the division of revenue, and the appropriation bill. Now, we'll have to wait and see what these new bills are going to look like, particularly when it comes to making up for the budget deficit. We have had an inordinate amount of debate, conversation around what the country's budget needs to look like over the last 3 months. That's how long this impasse, one could argue, has gone on for. To unpack this issue further, we're joined by Imran Valodia, who is Pro-Vice Chancellor Climate Sustainability and Inequality and Director at the Southern Center for Inequalities Studies at Wits University. Imran, good morning.
It's great to be on your show. Thank you so much.
Advocate Benjamin Cronin is a lecturer in the Department of Commercial Law and an advocate of the High Court of South Africa. Advocate Cronin, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Imran, the news or the announcement by the Finance Minister this morning has been largely welcomed by different sectors of society. Of course, the dreaded VAT increase now will not be going ahead. The process, however, not quite as simple as that, in as far as the steps that now need to be followed in Parliament to make this pronouncement a reality. Let's talk about what is going to happen and what needs to happen now to give effect to this announcement.
I was actually in support of the increase in VAT, and there's really two reasons for that. I think although lots of people have said that VAT in South Africa is regressive, I think the facts and the research on that issue show that VAT is not regressive. because our zero rating system really does protect the poor kind of really, really well. The second point to make about it is that if you're going to assess the kind of regressivity or the progressivity of kind of any proposal, you should look at both the tax side and also the expenditure side. And my reading of the proposal, kind of initially to kind of increase it by 2%, by 2 percentage points, was that a large amount of the kind of additional kind of income would be spent on low-income households. So kind of in net terms, those households would have been better off with the VAT increase. But that is now all kind of past us. I think the key issue now is to see kind of how the expenditure side of budget is now going to be adjusted to deal with the fact that we don't have the VAT revenue. The danger from my perspective would be that we're going to have kind of expenditure cuts in social expenditure, which is really, really going to hurt the poor. So kind of over the last 5 years or so, kind of our budget has kind of reduced expenditure on these kind of really important social services, and we kind of seeing the effects of that. So we're seeing the problems in healthcare, we're seeing the problems in our infrastructure. Kind of, I think we'll now have to wait to see kind of exactly how kind of how expenditure is going to be reduced, and then assess the impact of that.
Advocate Cronin, do you want to come in perhaps with your own view of what should happen next, or what you think happens next?
Yes, Cathy, thanks. Excellent question. I mean, I have great sympathy for the vast majority of South Africans who must be looking at this confusing up and down road and wondering exactly as you frame it, what next? I think my first point is I would like to emphasize that what hasn't happened for the last 30 years is meaningful public participation and meaningful parliamentary democratic process in the budget. And I think that as evidenced by the court case that preceded this announcement and the hearing on Tuesday, the quintessential issue being put before the court is when the VAT rate was increased by mere announcement. The minister was granted the power in the VAT Act, and this is a similar power shared across other tax acts. Made that announcement, he didn't yet have the democratic support of Parliament. And so it creates an immediate constitutional, legal, and practical challenge because as things stand now, despite the announcements overnight, on 1 May, the increase will be given effect to in terms of Section 7.4 of the VAT Act. Now, what the Minister of Finance has announced overnight is that he's withdrawing the rates, as you described, the rates, draft rates bill, and replacing it with one that would indicate a 15% rather than 15.5% rate. Now, I think it's implausible that can be enacted between now and 1 May. That's about 3.5 business days for Parliament, and it wouldn't really be in compliance with the Money Bills Act. And there's another feature of the court case which is also relevant to this question, which is Parliament has already adopted a fiscal framework. I personally hold views questioning whether the purported binding nature of the fiscal framework is itself constitutionally compliant. But if for the moment we accept that it is, that fiscal framework was adopted with the assumption that the VAT increase would be included. So there are a number of procedural, substantive, legal, and practical problems, impediments in the way to give effect to this announcement before 1 May. The other alternative is that the interim order sought in courts is granted by the court, perhaps before Tuesday or on Tuesday next week, which would, if the court determines it, potentially suspend the application of the VAT increase.
The point that you raise around the passing of the fiscal framework and then, of course, the adoption of these bills that we have talked about, in order for it to follow muster, there is a prescription that says that these bills have to be in line with the fiscal framework. And, of course, now they are not, because there will be no adjustment to VAT. How serious a hurdle is that?
Sorry, Cathy, is that directed to the lawyer in the room?
Yes,
sure.
yes.
Great. Yeah, no, thank you. Lovely question. I must upfront say, take this with a pinch of salt, because I have my own personal views on this, and it hasn't been tested in court. The minister, I think, has telegraphed interesting, somewhat ambiguous statements about the degree to which Treasury would consider it binding. And you're quite right. I really like what you're pointing out. Section 8 sub 9 in the Money Bills Act says that subsequent amendments considered by Parliament in relation to the spending bill, so the division of revenue and the appropriation bill, but also to the tax bills, to the revenue bills, must be, quote, in accordance with the fiscal framework and estimates. I'd like to just make 3 points. So the first is, what is the fiscal framework? Well, it's actually just a set of assumptions. It shouldn't, in my view, it's incoherent to attach legal binding weight to it, and the adoption by Parliament and this provision creates practical and legal problems, not unlike the problems that we confront with the VAT provision that allows the minister essentially to bind Parliament in the interim. And the third point I'd like to make is, I think even in the announcement that the minister made overnight, he talks about withdrawing the bills, but not the fiscal framework, which has been adopted. And so I think, again, absent the court, because this was the second part of the court case, absent the court granting an order to start that process again, it does raise procedural questions about whether one could proceed with this revised VAT Act. Now, from my perspective, if they did proceed with it, I think it would progressively, perhaps, open up interesting legal and practical democratic questions about whether there should be a binding collar, if you will, from the fiscal framework. And I think it's also illustrating the point that, a number of the commentariat have made the point that the fiscal framework over the short period, its estimates are wildly out of sync with expectations that might be in place today, given world events, but also reflects a pragmatic challenge presented to Parliament, which is adopting a fiscal framework and estimates might actually frustrate public, because this is the real core issue for me on all fronts, is Parliament has yet to even pass any of these money bills. So much of this discussion has the character of theoretical proposals being presented to Parliament. The problem with the VAT Act is that it has legal effect because of that problematic provision.
So in your view then, Benjamin, do you think that given just the procedural wrangling of it all, because it really it's now down to administrative processes that are quite complex, and you'd imagine for the ordinary man in the street very difficult to try and keep up with. Do you think that the best thing to happen might well be to see what the court outcome is, and if that outcome grants the interdict, it provides low-hanging fruit for how to avert the increase come 1st of May?
Yes, with some trepidation, I would agree with that description. The trepidation being, obviously, we don't want to prejudge what the court's decision would be. But yes, I think inevitably that is the road we're on, because I don't think that you could, in compliance with the Money Bills Act and related procedures, in a compliant fashion, amend the VAT Act between now and 1 May. And so we're really left with what the court may or may not determine by Tuesday next week. And so what I'm suggesting is that if the court decides not to grant this interim relief, it's more than likely that on 1 May, even though the minister might envisage an amendment act passing through Parliament that brings the rate back down to 15%, I think in terms of current law, on 1 May, we're very likely to get a 15.5% increase given effect to.
Imran, the process, of course, is it's quite important, to keep up with and to try and understand. Also, just because of the confusion that is likely to reign. The parliamentary process, from what we understand, we had the chairperson of the committee of the finance committee here just about a week or so ago, explaining the process. It won't be anything less than a month, between a month and 90 days before all due process is followed by Parliament in as far as this reversal is concerned. Do you think that there's clarity around the steps of this process, or has the political noise around it simply consumed what the administrative requirements will be?
So I'm no expert in law, so I'll defer to Benjamin on that. My understanding of the issue is that the proposal to increase the rate of VAT has been withdrawn. Has been withdrawn by the finance minister. We'll see what happens in the court process, but my sense is that irrespective of that process, the political decision has been made that there will not be an increase in the VAT rate. So I'm not sure that I agree with Benjamin that come the 1st of May we might have the VAT rate at 15.5. My view is that is being withdrawn. So we will have a VAT rate of 15% on the 1st of May. I think the one positive thing to come out of the entire saga is that the budget process has become, or will likely become, a lot more subject to democratic process, and I think that's for the country that's a good outcome. I think partly we're in new terrain. In the past, we had a party that had more than 50% of the seats in the parliament. So no matter what people would have thought about the budget, I think that the ANC was pretty sure that it would support its finance minister to get that through. I think we're no longer in that situation, and I think that opens up all sorts of interesting possibilities for democratizing the whole process, which I think is a good outcome.
Okay.
I think there's also possibilities.
Imran, I'm going to pause you there.
Sure.
I'll give you a chance to continue in a moment. It's time for the latest news headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. On the news headlines, the Pietermaritzburg High Court has dismissed former President Jacob Zuma's application for leave to appeal against the court's refusal to remove the lead prosecutor, Advocate Billy Downer, from the corruption case. Chairperson of the DA's Federal Council, Helen Zille, has hailed the reversal of the 0.5 VAT increase as a victory for the party, and Russia has carried out a major drone and missile attack on Kyiv. Emergency services say at least 9 people were killed and dozens wounded. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
The Spanish Princess series continues the story of Queen Catherine and Henry VIII. Catherine's struggle to produce an heir places her marriage and position in the court at risk, and she's haunted by her choices from the past. Despite proving herself a politician, a diplomat, and a national inspiration, and even a military commander, Catherine must battle to save her love with the king and to preserve the peace and prosperity of their reign. The Spanish Princess Season 2 airs Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
The Red Devils want to add more heat in Cairo to make life difficult for Masandawana, but Kabuyelo refuse to shake and break. They are on a mission to elevate their game and march to the final with big smiles. It is do or die. This is the second leg semi-final encounter of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Catch the incredible action of African football. Al Ahly FC versus Mamelodi Sundowns FC. This Friday, 25 April at 5:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, S3, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM.
It's an interesting time with regard to the Trump administration.
South Africa, 60%, 30%, and they've got some bad things going on in South Africa. You know, we're paying them billions of dollars, and we cut the funding because a lot of bad things are happening in South Africa. The fake news ought to be looking at it. They don't want to report it.
Of course, everybody's doing a calculation and speculating on what could be included. The safest thing to do is to get confirmation from the US as to how they arrived at the number.
The African countries almost have to think of what I would call the coalition of the wounded, looking into various countries and saying who has been badly affected by the US and how can they open up the room for engagement on that.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m. Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo. Cathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
We continue the conversation on the talking point. We're looking at what next following the announcement by the finance minister around his decision to reverse the increase of VAT. Imran Valodia is one of our guests this morning. He's director at the Southern Center for Inequality Studies with Wits University. Advocate Benjamin Cronin, lecturer in the Department of Commercial Law, also an advocate of the High Court of South Africa. Imran, let me give you a chance to conclude the point that you're making before we went to headlines.
Yeah, so the second point I wanted to make was around expenditure. So now that we don't have a VAT increase, the kind of only option that is open to the Treasury is to reduce expenditure. There's two possible things that might happen. The first is that there's a serious program to kind of reduce kind of expenditure that kind of isn't effective, that is spent on things that we don't need. What we might think of as corruption, full expenditure, etc. My concern with that is that those kinds of reprioritizations of expenditure don't happen because someone says that they should happen, and they don't happen quickly. They happen if there's the political will and the political systems make that happen, and it takes a number of years. It takes a number of years for that to happen. The second option is to reduce expenditure in the way that we've been reducing it for the last few years, and that is to cut budgets on health, education, basically on social services and infrastructure. So if we go down that path, I think we're going to end up with a worse outcome than the increase in that, because the proposed increase in that was to fund all of those things. If we're going to cut there, and I think that's a more likely outcome, then I think in net terms we're going to be worse off as a society than we would have been otherwise.
Benjamin, I also wonder now, given again the withdrawal of this decision, there has of course been a commitment from the presidency in his State of the Nation address around increasing the zero-rated goods. Do you think that is still going to happen now that we've had this reversal?
It's an excellent question. I mean, we'll have to see the substance of the draft that's to follow. But maybe if I could, in part, just to address some of the things raised by Professor Volodya. So I just want to be very clear from my perspective. Absent Parliament rushing through a non-compliant procedural amendment before 1 May, or the court suspending it, we will have a 15.5% VAT rate on 1 May. That is our current law. I just want to be very clear about that position from my perspective. I wish to concur with what Professor Volodya said, welcoming the increasingly democratic character of the budget. It obviously makes it a lot more messy, and I think, Cathy, as you put it out right at the beginning, it makes it quite confusing to a public who are used to a quite, shall we say, formulaic budget process in which what's proposed by Treasury is simply adopted without question by Parliament. But I want to return to this central point, which is even this announced reversal, it still bears characteristics of an anti-democratic ministerial diktat, in that it is not the position of the law. It is not the position of the minister to be making law. And I think that was what was being challenged on Tuesday, correctly. And the minister is still trying to do that. So in other words, overnight by a mere announcement, he's trying to indicate that he's somehow able to change the VAT rate. And unlike the Section 7.4 power, where he's doing so in the course and scope of presenting the budget, already a problematic power, this is, I mean, the question to ask is, in terms of what power is he announcing the reversal of the VAT? And the proposals regarding spending as well, I concur with the notion that it should be a democratic decision in Parliament, and that has yet to take place. So there's never been an amendment to a spending bill in Parliament in 30 years. It's never been amended. So I think what's missing, so we've had a huge amount of noise in our society about this, and correctly, I mean, these are important decisions, but our elected representatives in Parliament need to be given the opportunity, one, to facilitate meaningful public participation, and for us to see our elected representatives do the serious hard work of making what is essentially political decisions about where to spend money, how much money to spend. And I'd like to offer a slightly distinct view on how this will unfold in the future, in that I don't think the National Revenue Fund, out of which spending comes, is not a static commercial account like your or my bank account, right? It's much more akin to a notional account. And much like the framework is an estimate, we don't know what collection of tax will be. And the Minister of Finance and Treasury is vested with the authority to issue bonds where necessary. So I think that we should have more faith in the democratic decision-making of the budget and allow members of parliament to choose what taxes they wish to deploy. Note that we don't need to fear that there'd be an interruption to spending because in terms of the previous year's appropriation, government can continue to spend, so there won't be an immediate interruption. And this affords the window to Parliament to properly consider both tax and spending bills and to actually apply its mind. I know that I possibly didn't answer your question. Is there something you'd like me to supplement there?
As you're speaking, I'm also thinking about this court case because part of the reporting has been, the finance minister's team, his lawyers reaching out to the lawyers of the DA and the EFF to offer some form of out-of-court settlement. The way that you view it, the questions that have arisen within this court case, at least if I'm listening to you carefully, those are still very much questions that need to be answered. And part of those answers could also well inform what needs to happen next.
Absolutely. And I mean, I hesitate to say this with too firmly, but I think it might be in the interest of all parties, including the Minister of Finance, who apparently now is of the view that we shouldn't increase that, for the court to suspend its application on 1 May, and then to afford the other part of what was being considered in court is to restart the process of the fiscal framework, which would essentially start the process again in Parliament. And I think much of what is contained in the Minister of Finance's purported statement of overnight should be regarded with the same character as proposals being put forward to Parliament. The decision maker here regarding taxing and spending is Parliament. It has yet to actually decide what taxes will be imposed, what spending will be determined. The Minister of Finance in the past has never been really subject to amendment in spending proposals presented to Parliament, but that may change. And so I think we should, with some caution, treat statements from the Minister of Finance because they are provisional. Lawmaking should happen in Parliament, and importantly, this is another very important principle of our democratic process: is participation. There should be meaningful participation, including in relation to the spending bills. There might be really good points made by ordinary people saying there should be more spent on hospitals, more spent on schools, and Parliament has the power to both increase total spending, the total envelope. I imagine Professor Mohlahlana may not agree with me on that, but that is my view. But they can also reallocate money within that context. But to answer your question, may have been guilty of taking it further than you had asked. Yes, I think the court case is actually a very important part of this larger conversation because it might afford us the proper opportunity to start again, because the VAT provision that was being challenged locks us into an increase in 1 May, and there's something, either an amendment act is passed by Parliament, which seems implausible, or the court relieves us of that pressure point.
Imran, I can't help but think that this entire situation, given the complexities that arise now, we have to ask the question, could it all have been avoided, and what become the consequences for the fact that we're here now?
Yeah, look, I can't. I don't have any expertise in law. My field is economics, so I can comment on the economics, not on the legal aspects of it. But I think I think everyone has learned some things out of this kind of process. I think in the past, the Minister of Finance could make the proposals and would be pretty assured that he or she had the political support to pass that through the parliamentary system. We're no longer in that situation, and I think with the sort of benefit of hindsight, I think all of the actors might have acted in a different way. I think my concern from the economics point of view is that my reading of the proposal to kind of increase the VAT was that it was dealing with two absolutely fundamental economic issues. The first is it was attempting to push the economy into kind of a higher growth trajectory. And I think if we had succeeded with that, lots of our problems on the debt side, lots of our problems on the expenditure side, and lots of our problems indeed on the revenue side would have been made a lot easier. And second, for a number of years, we have effectively been reducing social expenditure per capita, right? And our health services, our education services are being undermined in that way.
All
so
right.
from an economics point of view, that budget made economic sense to me, and I think the kind of argument that VAT is regressive is not true. In fact,
All right.
all of the evidence from researchers shows that it's not. I think this now throws us into an uncertain economic space.
Okay.
And I think we'll have to see how we manage.
We're going to have to leave it there. Imran Valodia, Advocate Benjamin Cronin, thanks for your input. Certainly more food for thought, but also an assertion and an affirmation of the fact that this victory is not necessarily a panacea to the broader economic questions that we have to answer that involve how to get the country back on the right trajectory. The Talking Point, back with you again tomorrow between 9 and midday.
Your Sunday nights are about to get big on S3. We have some of the biggest movie titles that will take you on adventures that you simply cannot miss. Thomas arrives in a glade at the center of a giant maze. The race to escape the maze leads him to a journey. Should they escape, all questions will be answered. Tune into The Maze Runner, Sunday, the 27th of April. Maze Runner Darth Cure on the 4th of May. Maze Runner The Scorch Trials on the 11th of May. S3 Blockbuster Movies, Sundays at 7 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
April is Freedom Month, a time to reflect, remember, and celebrate. At SAFM, we honor the journey of our nation and the resilience of its people. United in the defense of our freedom and democracy, we salute every voice that keeps the spirit of liberation alive. Stay tuned to SAFM, where the nation comes together. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of the book The Thing with Zola by Zibu Sitole, read by Lerato Mvelase.
A cold wind blew through Zola's t-shirt as she stepped out of the car, and Bali draped his jacket over her shoulders without asking. She was so taken by the beauty of the boutique hotel that she felt sheer awe. The limestone walls, veined with flowering bougainvillea vines, made her think of an old Romanesque church she'd seen somewhere before. They walked through the ornate wooden doors that were almost twice as high and definitely twice as wide as any door ever needed to be. Inside, the hotel had all the warmth of a cozy home. The wallpaper and the paintings transported Zola to a time long before she was born, and she warmed herself by a generous fire while Mbali signed them in. I really hope I brought the right clothes, Zola confessed as they walked down a carpeted passage to their room. Really? I don't even like clothes on our backs right now. Mbali snaked an arm around Zola's waist, pressing himself against her. You're too much. Zola giggled. A shiver of anticipation ran through her body, and her heart thumped in her chest. In their room, Zola was finally free to let the magnetic pull between her and Mbali take over, drawing them into a passionate kiss, their hands moving quickly, instinctively, over each other's bodies, caressing, undressing, stroking, feeling, and giving and taking pleasure. Zola fell back into the feathery cushions of the bed, her arms reaching for Mbali's face, her fingers combing through the hair of his beard and running down to his broad, rippling chest. The cream-white walls and the crystal chandelier above the bed swirled as Zola's vision blurred, her breath catching in her throat. She did not know where Mbali ended, and she began as they moved as one. Later in the bathroom, Zola licked her lips. The bathroom was big as her bedroom at home, with gleaming white porcelain features against the rustic pine trimmings and copper accent, luxurious and homely all at once. In the shower, Zola stood under the jets of scalding hot water and let it wash over her body, relaxing her tight muscles. She had just allowed her thoughts to get lost in the steam when she felt Mbali's hand on her shoulder. I could stay here forever, she whispered, leaning back into Mbali, allowing him to wrap himself around her as the hot water rained down on both of them. I don't think I could do forever. In a few seconds we'll both be boiled. Mbali laughed, wrapping Zola in a thick plush robe as they both stepped out of the steam. Besides, I've worked up quite an appetite, and I know the perfect place to enjoy it. Back in the bedroom, Zola crawled between the thick, fluffy sheets onto the warmth of the bed and watched as Mbali pushed the room service cart closer. It was heavy with an assortment of foods, fresh fruit, meat, and cakes. Zola realized that she hadn't eaten all day. You really do think of everything, Mbali Tabete? Zola smiled, picking up a bunch of grapes. Back in Jozi, Oguhle had spent much of her Saturday afternoon sitting across the table from a man with waist-length dreadlocks tied neatly into a ponytail behind his head. You're lying. I mean, seriously, you're making this all up, Oguhle squealed. I'm telling you, it was a nude hike hosted by naturalists, Leroux said, covering her hands with his over the table. In winter? Why would you do that in winter? Oguhle asked between bursts of laughter. Smiling, Leroux shrugged and leaned back in his chair. He wasn't typically handsome. He didn't have any of the features Oguhle usually found attractive, but he made her laugh, and Oguhle felt as if she hadn't stopped laughing since she'd met him just the day before. He was only a little bit taller than she was. His clothes were simple and well-worn. When he hugged her, all she could smell was sweat and fabric softener. Oguhle looked down at Leroux's warm hands over hers, his fingers moving over her skin in circles. It was comforting. It soothed her. I should go with you on your next nude hike. See what it's all about since you insist it isn't just a bunch of perverts in the mountains. Like I said, I did it once and I'll never do it again. But you're welcome to greet the sunrise with me any morning, Leroux said with a twinkle in his eyes. Oguhle giggled at the thought. I expect a little more romance before that, she said firmly. Leroux laughed, realizing the implication of his innocent suggestion. Oh, I just mean that sunrise hikes are very romantic, starting with me ringing your gate bell to collect you at 5 a.m. In the comfortable silence that followed, Oguhle blushed, raising her eyes to meet his every few seconds and finding that every time she did so, he was staring back at her. Chapter 29, An Offer You Can't Refuse. Zola had had an amazing weekend, but even the cozy luxury she had experienced with Mbali hadn't been quite enough to make her forget Oguhle's left-field suggestion of Rwanda. Zola had wrecked her brain and considered Oguhle's motives. As much as she, and now her mother, would want to keep Zola away from Mbali, surely neither of them would risk larger than life by sending her all the way to Rwanda if they didn't think she was capable. She dragged herself out of bed and slowly started getting ready for work, knowing she would be late, but deciding that she deserved some grace for all the evenings she had worked overtime getting ready for the expo.
Zola, are you sick?
Nomsebenzi asked, stirring a pot of porridge on the stove.
No, Ma, just tired,
Zola said, sitting down heavily.
Maybe you should call in sick,
Nomsebenzi suggested.
You've been working so hard. I have the day off. We could sit and relax together.
Zola sighed.
I wish I could, but I can't let Oguhle down.
Nomsebenzi shook her head with concern.
I'm fine, Ma. I'll see you when I come back this evening.
By the time Zola made it to the taxi rank, the queue of people headed to Jozi stretched all the way outside the gates of the taxi rank. Women sat at tables of baked cakes and sandwiches and sold amagwinya from buckets and tea and coffee in styrofoam cups. They were women of her mother's age, and Zola could easily imagine them being part of her mother's burial society or women's group at church. Priscilla Msimang was roughly the same age, but Zola couldn't imagine her alongside these women. Priscilla had said she and Zola were the same. But even if Priscilla had started out like Zola, there was nothing of that past left in her. A convoy of taxis arrived and soon Zola was squeezed against a window she wouldn't dare open. As the taxi rattled forward, the thought of Priscilla passing change over her shoulder made Zola sigh. Strangely, the ride to Jozi had become one of Zola's favorite times of the day. If she was lucky, she got to sit in the furthest seat on the middle bench of the taxi, and then she wouldn't need to get off until she reached her stop. This was her thinking time, and now she let her thoughts drift to Mbali, the weekend in Dahlstrom, the feeling of his body on hers, and how being close to him seemed to make her so reckless. Thinking about him made her feel warm all over. Zola grinned as the taxi swerved into the emergency lane, passing the rows of cars stuck nose to tail in the morning traffic. Her phone buzzed in her bag. Oguhle.
Hey, Zola, how are you?
Zola sighed louder than she should have.
I'm fine, just stuck in a bit of traffic. I'm on my way, though.
Oguhle was quiet, and Zola held on, waiting to hear why she had called. Her jaw tightened, and her beaded tennis shoes felt tight around her feet.
Zola, please always call beforehand if you know you're running late,
Oguhle said in a cool professional tone that was new to Zola. Zola suddenly missed the old Oguhle, the boss who so badly wanted to be liked.
I'm sorry. I'll see you later then,
Zola said, hanging up. She thought about it. It was unlike her to not call ahead, unlike her to have stayed over at Mbali's, unlike her to have lied repeatedly to her mother. Was this what Mbali Tabete had done to her?
There was another episode of the book The Thing with Zola, written by Zibu Sitole, read by Lerato Mvelase. The book is available online at www.penmacmillan.co.za and in all leading bookstores countrywide. It is broadcast on SAFM at 11:45 Monday to Thursdays on The Talking Point. It is produced for the station by Vovi Patala, read by Lerato Mvelase. Technical production, Wiseman Manmele, Nanda Koza, and Tato Mapuruma.
It's just after 12 o'clock on Thursday, the 24th of April, 2025. A very warm welcome to Update at Noon here on SAFM. Leading the conversation, I'm Sakina Kamwendo. Coming up in the next hour.
And today, after extensive engagement, it has resulted in the Treasury also coming to the party to agree with all of us that VAT review will not be implemented.
More reaction as Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana reverses the 0.5 percentage point VAT increase.
We think that it is very important for us to continue the dialogue, of course, not only around Russian invasion of Ukraine, but focus on the strengthening of bilateral relations.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is in South Africa on a first and official visit. Coming up in sport.
There's athletics on the go, the national champs, and Liverpool just 1 point away from winning the league.
As long as we don't do the guard of honor, I can live with that. And that's John Gericke coming up with those details in the second half of the show. For now, though, please share your views with us. Let us know what's on your mind. 41391. That's our SMS line number, charged at R1.50 per SMS. You can also write to us via X, our handle there at SABC News_radio, or you can send us a WhatsApp voice note on 082-692-3909. Well, these and more stories coming up on this Thursday edition of Update at Noon. First, though, the latest news with Ondelambana.
Thank you, Sakina. Top stories at this hour. IFP rejects National Treasury statement on VAT, and Ramaphosa meets with Ukrainian president. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good day. The Inkatha Freedom Party has rejected a statement made by the National Treasury that the decision to reverse the VAT increase necessitates the withdrawal of social security grants to low-income households. The National Treasury earlier announced the reversal of the 0.5% VAT increase following several weeks of discussions with political parties. Earlier this year, there were fears that the Social Relief of Distress Rand grant would be suspended after government said it was struggling to sustain the grant due to budgetary limitations. IFP MP Mkhuleko Hlengwa.
National Treasury, SARS and government must continue finding other revenue streams for income for the budget in order to ensure that we maintain and sustain the social relief packages that are embedded in the budget. This includes the increases to social grants and other related grants. It ensures that the social relief of distress is maintained. It also must ensure that the zero-rated items basket must be expanded in order for the poor to actually continue receiving the relief that they so urgently need.
Meanwhile, the chairperson of the DA's Federal Council, Helen Zille, says the reversal of the 0.5 percentage point VAT increase is a victory for the party.
Because a lot of negotiations had happened, supposedly, with the smaller parties before last Thursday. And yet last Thursday, the minister categorically said that the VAT increase would go ahead and that there was indeed no alternative to it. So it was clear that the DA's court intervention was the pivotal intervening factor